Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a trigger replacement in my FB Radom Polish Beryl, chambered in 762. Lots of videos out there that cover changing out AK triggers. I've done a few of them myself. A little bit interested to see how this is going to work out because the Beryl does have slightly different fire control group geometry and parts and whatnot. So this should be somewhat interesting. Hopefully it goes pretty well. Why I decided to go with the FIME Enhanced over something like the ALG is I had just heard conflicting reports on whether the ALG would work in this or not. I do have ALGs in two previous AKs that I have. I have one in my Palmetto State Armory AKV, and then also a modified one in my Galil Ace, and really love that trigger. Trigger is also a little bit more money. ALG Enhanced is I think it's about $120, whereas these FIME Enhanced are about I think I paid 60, maybe 65 for this one. Obviously, if I knew the ALG was going to be 100% reliable, and it might be, I may be misinformed, I probably would have gone with it over the FIME. But I do hear pretty good things about this. This trigger on the Beryl is not super great. The trigger that came in my Beryl, it breaks at 7 pounds. Really, like most AKs, is a single hook. Oh, a little tight. Like most AKs, it's more like a rolling break. If I'd say, to me, it feels familiar to a Geisley S3G, but lots of creep, and there's really no discernible break. Again, it breaks at 7 pounds. And then lots of travel for the reset. Though the reset is definitely super crisp and solid. So let's see how this FIME does. According to FIME's website, the length of travel is about 0.35. The reset is 0.15. The take up pound, since this one here is a 2-stage trigger, they advertise it as a 2-stage trigger. The take up is 1.7 pounds and the final break is 2.8 pounds. So total pull 4.5 pounds. That should be pretty good for an AK for me anyway. So let's start taking this thing apart and see how it goes. So now that we have the bolt and the recoil spring out, you can see it is a little bit different. Anybody who's familiar with AKs, I see that the spring is different. See, this is a single hook design. The retaining plate is different from a standard AK. The safety is even a little bit different. So this is going to be my first time messing with this. Let's see if how easily I can get it apart. All right, so first and foremost, let's get the safety out of here. Rotate it up and counterclockwise. Let's see, that popped off. You can see that's already completely different than what a standard AK safety would look like. Typically it's just one piece, wherein you see here comes out in 2 pieces. So put that to the side. Let's see. Release pressure on the hammer. Push it, see the hammer pin. Let's try getting that out of there. See the plate down in there that retains that. I don't know how well you can see it on video. That's definitely different. Usually they have that little spring clip, though a lot of people replace them with that shepherd's hook retaining plate. All right, so through the magic of video editing, the FIME trigger is magically installed and my Beryl looks different with some upgraded Archer parts. So in all seriousness, this is a couple of days after where I let off. I had some issues getting the trigger in that I had to work through and solve, which I did. So to spare you guys the pain of watching me fumble through trying to figure that out, along with sparing my pride and dignity a little bit, I cut all those parts out, and I'm gonna go into now how you do make it work and maybe explain how the Beryl trigger is different now that I have a better understanding of it. All right, so I went ahead and took the FIME trigger back out of my Beryl so you can really kind of highlight and show the differences between the Beryl fire control group and then your at least the FIME Enhanced, and I believe what's also, if I remember correctly, what would be like a standard AK setup. So first and foremost, let's look at the hammer and the spring. So, you know, between these two, the Beryls, you see obviously hammer geometry is a little bit different, but the biggest takeaway here is when it comes to the springs. Your spring, you know, your typical hammer spring that you see here, sits in the receiver, wraps around like this. And what it does is these two legs will ultimately end up catching on something about right here. If you can see this, get my hands out of the way. And the spring tension returns the trigger, you know, resets the trigger after the hammer is cocked. You know, obviously it pivots on the trigger spring, and the legs grab on, and the spring will push it back and make it pivot forward a bit. So where it's different with the Beryl is, you see, you do not have these parts of the legs on there. They're straight, they're cut off, and so instead you have this trigger return spring. So the trigger return spring will sit there and pick. The long leg will be pressed against the bottom of the receiver, and that's what returns the trigger back in. So besides this also being not captured, you know, they use this piece here. I don't remember what they call these. I know in the aircraft industry they call these things acre sleeves. It looks very much like an acre sleeve, but the pin will go through there. But it's captured here, so it's a one-piece unit between the disconnector and the trigger itself. And to be honest with you, I am not sure what this piece here does. Didn't even notice that while I was messing with it the other day. But anyway. And then you have your, you know, what would be in your typical AK would be that little shepherd's hook piece that sits and ends up retaining, sliding on here. Where's my other pin? Lays on top of here, and then the safety is what retains it and keeps it in place. So that's how it's different from a regular AK trigger. I already talked about the safety being different, obviously, than a standard AK. This is a one-piece unit, but those are the extra parts, so to speak, when it comes to the Polish Beryl and your standard AK. So, like I mentioned before, you know, the trigger, the OEM Polish trigger was super heavy, 7 pounds. Pretty consistently 7 pounds. The reset was very strong, and that's because of this spring right here. So now I'm going to go into some of the things I experienced, why I thought either this trigger was not going to work, or also that I thought, okay, well, maybe I wouldn't be able to use a standard AK trigger. And I did buy this separately because I had read that you had to use one of these. So I tried it with both, actually. I tried it with the Beryl springs, and I also tried it with, well, first I tried it with the standard AK spring, and then when I couldn't get the safety to go into place and rotate down, I thought, okay, because what it was doing is hitting this leg here. And I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll have to go ahead and install this spring along with the OEM return spring instead. And I ran into the same problem where I put the safety lever in, and then as I rotated in, this piece would hit the leg of the spring. So whether it be the return spring or whether it be your standard AK, and I could not get it to go in. I thought, man, I might just be screwed. And looking at the difference between them, you'll notice that the OEM trigger, it's got a groove that's cut out in there, a little recess for that leg of the return spring to sit down into. So once you rotate the safety lever down, you don't have to worry about it hitting this piece here. Now, dimensionally, you know, looking at it, I'd say maybe the FIME trigger or your standard AK trigger. You know, I thought, well, maybe I'll have to cut a groove in this to clear that. And then I kind of had a little bit of an aha moment and felt pretty stupid about it. But I'm still going to walk it through you guys, for you guys, just in case you encounter this on your own. Even if you're not using a FIME, at least maybe help you understand of how this goes together, so that you'll know, you can help you get over any challenges that you may have as you try putting it back together. All right, so now for reinstallation of the fire control group, the FIME Enhanced Fire Control Group. So anybody who's familiar with AKs already, fire control groups, know that these little legs here are like mouse traps. It is definitely in your best interest to make sure that you somehow secure those. I know some people will take empty shotgun shell and put it over it. I just use a zip tie. I don't have a bunch of empty shotgun shells laying around. But besides making it a lot easier for you to get this into position, it definitely aids also to make sure you don't end up poking yourselves with one of these later. So once you have them coiled up like this and attached, simply just drop it in, get them into position, and then you can go ahead and install your hammer spring. So for me, I do like to put a little bit of oil on the hammer spring or on my pins, just a little bit. Just get them a little wet. Go ahead and get that lined up. Let's see what I'm doing here. A little bit of spring tensions. It might sometimes keep you from being able to get it in on this side. But once you have that secured in there, now you can take your fire control group for the hammer along with the disconnector. Go ahead and drop that into place. So you have that dropped in. Same thing here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in this pin, just a touch. So once you get that in place, you have your two pins, which now are just simply slip fit. Now you can go ahead and cut your zip tie. Use these little hook scribes. There it goes. Sometimes they go on their own. And again, you want to make sure that the legs, make sure you can see it on camera, rest right where they're sitting there, where they're hooked on the back of the trigger. So once you have those in, you can go ahead now and take your retaining plate. And if you'll look at this thing, it sits in there just like this. This picks up the front loop, picks up the hammer pin. This groove here, or this here, drops into the groove for the trigger pin, and then you put your safety through here. So once you have your spring in the legs into position, it'll go in very easy. One of the mistakes that I made is I was trying to wrestle in place because I didn't know any better, while I still have my springs tied up around the hammer here. So you can see once it sits in place, very easy to go in. So now this is where I got tripped up and why I thought that maybe this wasn't going to end up working out. And that was when it came time to put in my safety. So put a little bit of oil on this as well. Take this piece here, the bar for the safety, go ahead and put it in, find the opening, you can see it pushes through right here. I don't know if it matters, but the roll pin that's in there, I noticed that when I took it apart, the roll pins were angled up and down, so kind of try to turn them in the same direction. I'm sorry, not up and down, forward and aft. So try to turn those in the same direction, and I think that's maybe because of the leg there, the spring, the roll pin will make contact with it. So this is where I got screwed up. So like I explained, the safety bar here holds in the retaining plate that it also retains your pins don't want to come out. Oh, something I did want to point out though. Grab my hook scribe again. Which orientation do you put this? So while you'll see here, there's a bulge right here. There's a joggled edge. So that side goes this way towards the inside of the receiver. Just inserts in. So again, slide it forward, picking up the hammer pin, picking up the groove in the trigger pin, and then lining this back up with the safety. There we go. Check my pin. The plate has caught it and retained it. So this is where I got screwed up initially. So when you go to reinstall, there's a keyhole here, and you have to put the safety in the same way, and then you see this mount, right, or this bar right here. When you go to slide it in, reinstall your safety. Let's see if I can highlight this. When I tried to rotate this down, it hits the leg of the spring. So just like I had mentioned before, whereas the Beryl trigger, it's got a groove for your return spring to sit down into. Your standard AK trigger, especially this FIME, does not have that. Because the safety design is different on the Beryl than it is on standard AK. So I thought, okay, well, that's not going to work. I can't rotate the safety down because that part of the safety bar is hitting on the spring and it just physically will not let it go through. So I went ahead and took it all back out, and I tried using these springs. I thought that would be different. At that point, I had not realized that it was hitting on that coil spring, or I suspected that maybe because this was a little bit thinner. But then when I put it back together with the FIME, it would not work either. And I thought, well, crap, maybe this just ain't going to work out. Then I had the brilliant moment of realizing that, oh, okay, well, if it's not going to work there, or if that's keeping it from coming out, well, then how about I just rotate this spring out of the way, so I don't have to contend with that. So, let's see, my safety bar fill back out. Once I get my safety reattached, I can swivel down the safety. And then I can just take my hook scribe here. There we go. That's it. Now it's sitting just like it should. And let's go ahead and put the bolt carrier back in. Should get a little bit of grease on here. So just like, you know, anywhere that you would grease up your standard AK trigger, you want to hit the same places here. You know, use whatever grease works for you. This is, I believe, yeah, the Extreme Weapons grease. Get some down here. I should put a little here because I'm noticing that's where it's starting to wear a little bit. Rub some on this part right here. The hammer face, allow that carrier to glide right on over. Put my carrier back in. Spring assembly. And let's check function. Safety on. Safety's engaged. Won't pull. Nice. Check reset. All right. Function check looks good. Let's go ahead and put it back together. All right, so now that everything's been put back together and function checked, you can see there's this, I'm really a big fan of this FIME trigger. Curious to know how much better the ALG would be, but especially for the money, definitely very happy with it. OEM Polish Beryl trigger. It was a 7-pound pull. It was very stiff, lot of creep to it, and the reset was a little bit longer than what I'd like it to be. I will say that I don't think this is not like an ALG trigger that feels like in my AKV and also my Galil, but it's not bad at all. As far as, say it's a 2-stage, there's the first stage, brake. So not like a carrot snapping brake or a glass rod like a Geisley AR trigger, but you can definitely feel where it starts to let off, and it really feels more like a Geisley S3G, just not as light. And then the reset, I let it go a little bit farther than what it really takes to reset it. Not much at all. Definitely a lot better over OEM. Again, still not an AR trigger, but this isn't an AR, it's an AK. So I'm really happy with it. And I think it's a really good trigger for the money. I definitely like the geometry a lot better, having a little bit of more of like a lightning bow versus the sharp hook like you see here. To me, that's just ridiculous. So braking on this thing here, you know, AK triggers are pretty inconsistent. I'm ranging anywhere, depending on the pull. You know, I've done it several times, and it goes anywhere from between 4.5 pounds and 5 pounds. Typically, it ends up being right in between there, probably like 4.75. So not light, not heavy. Definitely, again, no AR trigger, but again, this is not an AR. So hope that helped you guys out. For anybody who was maybe a bit intimidated to go ahead and try to change out their Beryl trigger, was hopefully my lessons learned for you can help you out. I know I didn't see any videos out there available for it before I started tackling this myself. So again, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, share it to anybody who you know maybe going through a similar issue. I know that there was just another shipment of Beryls that came in through Armors of America. I feel like they're definitely getting more popularity. I hadn't heard anything about these until just a few weeks ago. So a lot of people, I'm sure, will probably want to change out that crappy OEM trigger. So please let them know about the video and help them walk it through it. But again, thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.